Oh, hello. I was just looking through the rules for dueling. Apparently, apparently, as a Catholic, you're not allowed to duel. But I'm still looking through. There might be some way, you know. There's no rule that says that you can't touch each other with rapiers. I was also looking at this, but I don't think you can have a crusade against another Christian. So that's a bit of a thing. But, there's always just war. And, if that fails, I suppose murder, because purgatory. But no, in all seriousness, so Vox on his live stream 457, I think about 40 minutes in or so, I think one of the bears in their merciful mercy probably asked Vox if he would referee or something like that, a debate between Owen and myself on the moon shadow. And Vox said, oh yeah, absolutely would, because that would be funny. Now, I've got a blood feud with Owen, as you all know now. And if I can't duel, because of Catholic law, I'm going to find a way around it. But, if for some reason, I'm not allowed to duel, then perhaps a debate on the moon shadow would be the way to go. Just want to point out a couple of things. There's no way anybody can mistake me for a Savagnier type. But the challenge is now issued, Owen, challenge is out there now. I know the bears are going to let you know, that the Kurgan has challenged you now. And Vox has said, he'd happily referee it. It's probably a good thing, because Vox is pretty fair. And also he doesn't have the luxury probably of being able to do a dark stream for about 17 hours straight, which is what you and I would end up doing if there wasn't a referee there. So here it is, Big Bear. Here's the challenge. I suggest you check with Vox. If he's up to it, we can do it on one of his dark streams. You have to let me know if I need some weird special software, because, being an immortal, I don't rely on technology, just my wit and my fast reflexes. So hopefully it can just be done with Skype or something like that. I don't know. And if it can be done that way, I just ask that we have equal time. So whatever, Vox can referee and say, right, you get 5 minutes, you get 5 minutes. And we can knock through the moon shadow stuff. You can prepare as much as you want. But, if you take me up, man to man, moon shadow debate, I'll be there. So, yeah, that's challenge is issued. Now on to other things. This guy, Rodney Stark, is pretty cool dude. He wrote another book, which I've got only on Kindle, so I can't show it to you. But it's called Bearing False Witness by Rodney Stark. And it's also got a subtitle, which demystifies or takes away the lies about the Catholics. So there's a lot of Protestant lies about Catholicism, which Mr. Stark does a pretty good job of identifying. And the weird thing is, he's not Catholic himself. And I just found out from the jacket here that he is a distinguished professor of social sciences, which normally would make me just ignore him completely. But having read Bearing False Witness, I can tell that he's a pretty decent historian. And so I got this one here, God's Battalion, the case for the Crusades, which is really interesting because at the back, the truth about the Christian Crusades and Muslim jihad. So I'm hoping that this sheds, tells a bit more of the truth about it. So if you want to, interesting book. I haven't read it yet, so I will give a summary if I remember once I'm done with it. The other thing is, again, that believe seems to be really having an effect on people. Quite a few of you have told me that you bought it and that either you're halfway through reading it or whatever. Quite a lot of praise, which, you know, is nice. Thank you. But the interesting point about that is that I did a check. I think I might have mentioned it. I checked how many of these books have been bought. 21 books bought, at least 4 converts, or people that have told me they've got baptized or are going to get baptized or are either going to become Orthodox or Catholic or something like that. At least 4, and these are people that I don't know. I've never met them. You know, I just know them from the comments or a random email they sent me, which is good. I mean, it's really nice. That's unexpected. So thanks for that. And there was something else I wanted to mention. I was going to do a separate video on it, but maybe as this is going to be a pretty short one, but I might do a longer version of this. But I did want to mention the churchanity of the Catholics. And when I say Catholics, it's in inverted commas. You know, I want to again demystify a lot of both lies and bad practices of supposedly Catholic people. So one of them is the Mariology, which pretty much all the Protestants have been completely brainwashed into thinking that Catholics worship Mary. And that's not it. You know, it's that comes from a lack of linguistic understanding of the root of the word prayer. Being Venetian, I know Italian, and the word pregare, which is the Italian version of the Latin oremus, you know, pregare has got more than one meaning. Most Romantic languages will have a word that has more than one meaning, which is very confusing for English-speaking people, because the English-speaking people, as you know from my 13 volume set of the Oxford English Dictionary, they've got a word for just about everything. The Latin people are more perhaps empathic or empathetic, and they might have a little bit more understanding of human sort of intimacy and that sort of thing. So they probably don't need as many words, and a word in Italian or in French or in Spanish can mean several things. And then it gets degraded all the way to the Portuguese, who, you know, they basically only have like 10 words in their whole set. But anyway, so pregare, which if you literally translate pregare into English, you'd say to pray, or, you know, preghiera, prayer, you know. But pregare can mean both prayer as in worshipping God, but it can also mean, for example, when you do somebody a favor and they say thank you, the response is prego. So, and the Russians also have this. So in the Russians, you do something, they say spasiba, and the correct response is pожалуйста. You're welcome is how it gets translated. But it's not really, the English just don't have a word for this, you know, being the rude people they are. You know, it's like, it can be used as prayer to worship God, or it can also be used as a polite way of asking for something. You know, it's like, if you say prego, it's an invitation to step through a door first or something like that. But you can also pregare towards somebody in order to ask them for something, ask them for some help, or, you know, implore them to help you with something. And so, you know, for example, the Ave Maria, you know, Hail Mary, is a prayer to Mary, asking her to pray for us sinners now and in the hour of our death. You know, Hail Mary is Hail Mary. I know the Hail Mary in Latin, so I have to think about it to translate it, because I say it in Latin. But, you know, Ave Maria, gratia plena, Hail Mary, full of grace, Dominus tecum, God is with you, benedictus tu in mulieribus, et benedictus fructus ventris tui, Jesus. Blessed are you amongst women, and blessed the fruit of your womb, Jesus. Santa Maria Mater Dei, ora pro nobis peccatoribus, nunc et in hora morte nostra. Amen. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and in the hour of our death. Amen. So again, it's asking somebody to pray for you. The same like you would ask your friend, or the Catholics, and the other thing is praying to the saints. Again, idiotic. No, it's the same thing. Catholics don't make a distinction between the dead and the living. If you're Catholic and you die, we believe you're with the saints. So you can pray to your dead grandfather, which I have done, and he has definitely replied, very clearly, in ways that actually objectively prove that I was receiving some information that I had no way of knowing, and it's objective. I can never prove it to you, but it's objective for me because I know what I know and I know what I don't know. And I mentioned this to my father and said, listen, I pray to granddad, and when I say I pray to granddad, I mean that in the English sense, as in I'm asking for his help, his intercession, his asking him to pray for me, asking him to help me understand, right? Just like you would ask a living person, if he's your friend, it's like, can you pray for me? Or like, I don't understand why this is like this. What do you think? What do you think about God and how it works and Christianity and whatever? And your friend will tell you what he knows, right? So there's no difference. And this is not talking to the spirits. It's not necromancy. It's just an accepted part of Catholicism, that you ask the saints to pray for you. And I got some information back, and I told my dad, I said, I don't know if I'm losing my fucking mind or if granddad is talking to me. I don't know. It's like, sounds really weird because my grandfather, as far as I knew, I don't remember him going to church. I don't remember him ever speaking about Christianity. My grandmother did. My grandmother went to church regularly. She went to mass. She even apparently gave indulgences to have a baby boy, which was my dad. And it happened, and she made a promise, basically like, I will give this ring or something, I don't know exactly what it was, if I have a baby boy. And sure enough, she had a baby boy, and that was after she had a baby girl. So anyway, the thing is, my grandfather was a very direct, honest, some people say cold-blooded, but it's not cold-blooded. It's he was totally in control of his emotions for most of his life. I never saw that man become emotional. A little bit of emotion in some strong moments or whatever, and towards the end of his life, he was, he knew it was coming, and I think he got a little bit softer in terms of, always humble though. The thing is, that's what people didn't understand about him. He was always humble. They all assumed he was an arrogant guy, full of himself, and that's not true at all. He was just calm. He just took things in his stride. He was never arrogant, and that became very clear to me towards the end of his life, because we used to play checkers. He taught me how to play checkers, and when I was a little kid, I was about 5, 6, 7 years old, he used to give me the whole front row as a handicap so that we would be evenly matched. And then as I grew older, as I was a teenager, we used to play pretty much the same, And we'd always play 3 games, and it would end up, usually he'd win 1, I'd win 1, and we'd finish on equal terms. There's a way in checkers to that neither person can win. So we used to play this game, and we, by the time I was a teenager or so, that's usually how the game would go. We were equally matched, it would either be like 3 games where nobody wins, or 1 game where one wins, 1 game where the other one wins, and the last game usually would end up in a tie. But the last game I played with him, he was over 90 years old, and I was in my late 20s, I think, or mid 20s, something like that. And no, maybe I was in my 30s already. And I played a game with him, and I won the first one. And I saw that I was going to win the second one, and I threw the game. But I don't have a very good poker face. You know, I did my best to like make it an accident. And the third game, I made sure we finished even. And we finished the game, and we're putting away the pieces. And he looks at me and he goes, next time, instead of letting me win that game, just give me a handicap, like I used to do when you were a kid. And it fucking killed me, you know. People who know me know that I don't have much of I used to have a Russian girlfriend once that, as a joke, I can't remember what it was, but I said something like, but Olesya, no, that would, you know, hurt my conscience. And she burst out laughing and said, Giuseppe, I think your conscience died a long time ago. And, you know, I'm not one to get embarrassed or anything like that. I haven't really ever felt much shame, really. But in that moment, I wanted to disappear, you know. My grandfather telling me that, I felt terrible, you know. So, anyway, that's a little story about him. And sounds like the monkey's knocking down a wall next door, but all right. Anyway, so what was I? I lost my train of thought now. I was I can't remember what it was about. Something about the Crusades, or but I don't know. Oh no, that was it. So I don't remember him ever, you know, talking about church or faith or God or anything like that. But I kept getting this message from him, which was just like, have faith. You know, the Italian equivalent of like, just have faith. And I told my dad, and I said, you know, Dad, I don't know if I'm just losing my fucking mind, but I really think it's him. But I've never, you know, he never discussed anything like that. And my dad on the other end of the phone said, no, that's him. That's absolutely him. He used to tell me that when I was a kid. You know, and I couldn't understand what the hell he was talking about. I never got it. I never understood what he was trying to say. You know, that's absolutely him. You know, so there was a proof there that was helping both my dad and me, that I knew nothing about, because he never said those words to me, but he said them to his son, and his son never said those words to me. You know, my dad never mentioned that. So that's kind of a proof. And, you know, and there was quite a few instances like that. So I'm not going to go through all of them or whatever. And I don't really care whether you believe it or not. But, you know, the thing is, Catholics don't pray to saints. We don't worship the saints. We simply, you know, ask for an intercession, the same like you would say of your friend, or the same you would say of, you know, somebody that, your priest or whatever. That's what it is. So any Protestant that says, oh, you Mary worshippers, you're an idiot. You're an actual moron. You do not know what you're talking about. You're speaking out of turn, and you're ignorant. You know, you've been brainwashed with some lies, and you haven't bothered to investigate them for yourself. Similarly, no Catholic prays to the saints, worships the saints. That's not what we do. Now, there are some people in the chat, whatever, that like in the comments that said, hey, but you know, I've seen people do what I really think is worshiping Mary or worshiping the saints and whatever. That may well be. You know, there's churchians in every denomination. And remember that churchianity is the largest fake denomination of Christianity there is in every denomination. And the Catholics have been very hugely deceived since 1958. So, and before that too, you know. So it may well be that there are some pretend Catholics or people who call themselves Catholics or people who think they're Catholic who actually worship the saints or worship Mary. But they're morons, you know. Again, you know, there's probably somebody out there that looks just like me who says that he's a pygmy from the Congo. So what? It doesn't make him a pygmy from the Congo. There's probably idiots out there that say that golf players need to use basketballs and kick them with their foot. So what? It doesn't mean they're golf players, you know, that they're golfers. No. Just because somebody does a stupid, idiotic thing doesn't make that thing the Catholic thing or the golfing thing or whatever. Educate yourself, you know. Stop just taking people's words for stuff and educate yourself. Which brings me full circle back to the moon shadow. Why do I care about the moon shadow? Why do I care if BigBear hasn't got a clue about the moon and its shadow? You know, in the big scheme of things, and even in the small scheme of things, I don't really. You know, if somebody wants to believe the moon is made of cheese, well, they're wrong. They're kind of dumb, and it's on them. But, you know, and somebody in the chat, some woman said something like, oh, you are a delta, what Vox calls a delta. No, lady, you haven't got a fucking clue. I couldn't really care about the deltas. They're useful people, and that's fine. But, you know, you know, the people that understand the social sexual hierarchy know what I am. And I'm a very reluctant leader, very reluctant. But, you know, if I have to lead, well, then it's going to be my way or the highway, and that's it. It's not even going to be like discussed. So, you know, when I say that that just because somebody says they're Catholic or whatever, it doesn't mean that they are. And this is the same thing. Just because somebody tells you that the moon is a lamp or something, it's important for the young, the impressionable, those who have been lied to all their lives, those who have not had a classical education, those who maybe have been traumatized. It is absolutely fundamental that you have a basis of reality, that you have a basis of truth. Now, if you are incapable of distinguishing between the number 2 and the number 3, you think that's a small thing, but it's not. If you think 2 equals 3 or that they're interchangeable, you literally cannot maintain a working, functioning society. Because the minute that you cannot distinguish between reality and magic and superstition and voodoo and woo crazy ideas, you've got a problem. Now, keep in mind that I believe I am very firmly rooted in reality, absolutely firmly rooted in reality. And for a very long time, I was very much rooted in material reality because that's what I could deal with, you know. I'm only a relatively recent Christian. And it happened to me as a stunning shock. So it was never clear to me that Christianity was at all real. And when that became made absolutely clear to me, I had to reevaluate a whole bunch of things. But that doesn't mean I forgot those things. Doesn't mean I forgot those skills. So maths is important. You know, being able to do correct maths is important. It's absolutely important because it is a language of how you can describe a lot of things in the knowable universe. Knowing that the planets exist, that the moon orbits the earth orbits the sun, and so on, it's important. It's important because it gives you a foundation on reality. And it is absolutely not contradictory to God's majesty. Quite the contrary. Quite the contrary. If you believe that God has to be so small and so stupid that all he could do is one dome-covered flat earth with a lamp in the sky and little pinpricks to pretend to be stars, you're retarded. You have got no idea of the majesty of God. God is not one planet. It would astonish me. It would absolutely knock me on my ass, much more than discovering that Christianity was real and God is real, to discover that there are no other living organisms in the universe. In fact, I believe that that is almost impossible. Okay? God is far bigger, far more great and enormous and majestic and glorious than you can possibly imagine. So, no. You know, a vast, almost, but not infinite, we know it's not infinite, but almost infinite, you know, huge, so big for our mind, it may as well be infinite, although it's not, and there's reasons why it's not, is absolutely glorifying God, you know. So, no. And it's important. It's important because, again, you can use astronomy to predict all sorts of things years in advance, decades in advance, in fact, centuries in advance. And the Mayans could predict all sorts of things, millennia in advance. That's astronomy. That is a very, very, very strong scientific proof that the model is good. Okay, and there are actual things that you can do. I mean, the ancient Greeks did it, so you can do it. You can actually do some work yourself to figure out that the moon is, an object in the sky, that it travels around the Earth. You can figure out what the size of the Earth by using trigonometry and so on. You might not know how to do that, but you can learn, and you can learn trigonometry, and trigonometry works. You can test trigonometry to your heart's content here on Earth, from the small size of your desk to the stars. It really does work, and it works every time. So it's not just an idea, okay? So that's important, and that's what concerned me, insofar as I am concerned about the other human beings around me. Vox said a very interesting thing, that he said until 2015 he was just doing his own thing, and it's only then that he learned that you need other people to do bigger things. And I know exactly how he feels, because that is a lesson that I probably will always struggle with. There are few people that I would work with and enjoy it, because I'm pretty intense. I tend to go, all in sort of when I'm doing something. And that's why I never played team sports. Vox is light years ahead of me. He plays football. I mean, that's basically like being able to have, a luncheon with a bunch of girls and keep up with the topics. Playing soccer is basically the same as having brunch with 20 other girls, So that's what you get, Vox. That's what you get. When you say that, how is Owen to know that I'm not Venetian? What do you mean? I mean, look at this profile. Yeah. I mean, if physiognomy is not real, what do we have left? Huh? I mean, come on. This is not British. This is clearly the profile and the features of a handsome, intelligent, tall patrician of Venetian origin. The best people on earth, of course. I mean, it's obvious. I mean, you wouldn't like it, Vox, if somebody confused you with a Congolese pygmy from Minnesota. No, you would get upset, So there you go. Just making friends and influencing people, you can tell, right? And that's kind of the thing, right? There's very few people that sort of really understand my sense of humor, and even not my sense of humor. Sometimes I'm just telling the truth as I see it and discussing what are objective facts. And I do that in a way, probably because of my slight Asperger's, that can really get under people's skin within 3 seconds flat. I mean, I have had, even when I was a teenager, I've had teachers burst out in tears, male teachers leave the class, male teachers start to blubber and not be able to speak because they start to stammer and stuff, simply because I pointed out, and I wasn't trying to, humiliate them or upset them, simply because I pointed out a massive flaw in their thinking, in their teaching, in their reasoning, in the syllabus they were supposedly teaching us. So all the gammas that get upset, just go away. You're not going to survive, and I've had all sorts of weird stuff, like happen just because I'm just being myself, sometimes not even saying anything. Just walk into a room and some weird feminist loses her shit because I walk in with some pretty blonde or whatever. It's just the way I walk upsets them or something. It's really funny. But anyway, so that's why the moon shadow, and the challenge is now out there, man to man, BigBear. So let's see if you take me up on it. And that's basically it. Go out there, continue to multiply and take over the earth. Oh, and there was a question somebody asked on the on the comments, what is the name for the followers of the Kurgan? And I mentioned that before. It's the immortals, of course. Now there's going to be two classes of immortals. You know, the generic immortals that follow me, that whatever, that subscribe. They're all cool. That's fine. But keep in mind that I'm really seeking the real immortals, the actual immortals, like the 300. I've had a couple of emails from some people that, you know, in time may end up proving to be the 300. If you don't know who the immortals are, if you don't know who the 300 are, well, probably you're not going to become one of them. So, you know, it's possible. Everything's possible. But the 300 changed the history of the world. And I don't really care about the fame. I don't care to be Leonidas. But if you're going to force me to lead, well, then among the leaders of men, Leonidas is a pretty good one to emulate. Le Valette is another one, a personal hero. The leader of the Knights of Malta, when the 1565 siege took place. Le Valette, Leonidas, those are the kind of leaders that if I have to be a leader, that's the kind of guys I'm going to try and be like. And please note that neither of them really was a strategist. They were tacticians, and very good tacticians. And that is my strength. You know, Vox is a brilliant strategist. Vox strategically is far superior to me. We had this conversation when I was living in Venice on a phone call once. I mentioned that to him, and I told him, I think you're definitely a better strategist than I am, but I think I'm a better tactician than you are by quite a bit. And he said, well, you know, I've never made any claim to be a good tactician. So it's really interesting because he really is a good strategist, and sometimes so good that I wonder if I have an IQ gap from him, you know, because, and I didn't know this, I really thought that Vox and I had the same IQ, and it's practically pretty much the same. You know, I scored between 157 and 152, so average it out 155. He says his is 150, but you know, 5 points at that level, it's nothing. But the thing is that Vox has admitted to being completely spatially retarded. So, but his strategic thinking, that means that his strategic thinking has to be higher than 155, than 150 or whatever, you know. And I wonder how much higher, because sometimes I look at what Vox is doing and I'm like, you know, at first it used to sort of offend my sensibilities, because being a tactician, my preferred method of combat or leading or group fighting is a small team that I can rely on 100%. And it doesn't really matter to me whether in that team I'm, you know, a team member or the team leader, because the kind of teams that I'm talking about, they're basically almost a mini mass mind, which is you can take out the leader and it makes no difference, because every single one of those men can replace the leader. And every one of those men knows exactly their worth and what they're good at and what they're bad at and what they're best at. And so does everybody else in the group. So there is no infighting. It's just like Bob's the best shooter, so he shoots. If there's shooting to be done, Bob does it first. If Bob is dead, then the next guy up comes, you know. If I'm the best leader of the group, then that's what, when I say jump, everybody doesn't even bother to ask how high. They just telepathically jump in the same direction that I want them to. And if somebody takes me out, the next best guy comes in to do that role. So that's the teams that I like to be involved with, if it has to be a group thing. You know, and they're usually small teams. Now, I've had teams like that, I've led teams like that, I've been involved in teams like that in a number of different settings, from martial arts, from security work, from all sorts of stuff that I probably will never discuss. But that's my preferred methodology of going at things. And that's tactics, you know, that's tactical stuff. So sometimes in that milieu, in that environment, your buddy is, you know, the honor between you, the camaraderie, the loyalty is paramount. There's nothing above that, pretty much. You know, there's God, and then there's truth, loyalty to your fellow, you know, operative or whatever. And so sometimes Vox will do things that to me look like absolute sort of almost selling out, you know. And I know I'm not accusing Vox of selling out in any way, shape, or form. That would be wrong. That would be like somebody calling me British, you know, and I would never do that. Vox has never sold out, never will sell out, which is why I was able to appreciate his way of thinking and his strategy, because I know instinctively, you know, because of how I'm built, I can tell when a man is gonna be standing next to you right down to his last bullet and then some. And that's the kind of guy that Vox is. So that's who he is. I know that. I don't need to explain it. I trust that 100% with my, you know, I feel it. It doesn't necessarily mean that it might be that way with me specifically. You know, I think he probably would if we were in that sort of situation. But he's also not a stupid guy, and neither am I. So neither one of us would be that sort of idiotic, like, we're just gonna die because we're brave. No, fuck that. We're gonna try and live as much as we can. But if it's, you know, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, well then fuck it. We might as well go out fighting, you know. So he is that kind of guy, but it's only because I know that I could then see his long-term strategy and his bigger picture strategy. And I'm pretty good at that stuff. You know, it's not like I'm an idiot in those things, but he's got a way of thinking about it that is far superior to me in the understanding of the human element involved. I hate the human element. You know, my Asperger's and my intensity requires the human element to be pretty much an extension of my own hand. And you can get teams like that, and when you do, they're almost unbeatable. And in terms of war or that sort of situation, a small team of 10 men like that, I would rather have that than a unit of 1,000 men. I'm not exaggerating. A unit of 1,000 men with a, you know, decent leader and relatively well-trained soldiers. I would rather have 10 men that are the way that I'm talking about than 1,000 that are a relatively decent military force. I would take those 10 men rather than 1,000 of a military force. And I'm not joking. I'm not exaggerating the numbers. I honestly, that is honestly what I would do. So I'm talking about a 1 to 100. Okay. If it was individual, you know, if it was me against a number, 100 is a lot, you know, for one person. But the thing is, it doesn't scale linearly. It scales geometrically. So 10 men of a cohesive team, like I'm talking about, are worth more. You know, as the team, they can take on more than one of them. So if you're saying, well, the ratio is 1 to 100, you know, 10 men to 1,000 means that one man is to 100. But it doesn't work that way. One man is probably not to 100. It might be like maybe 15 or 20 or something like that, depending on situation and many other factors. But the thing is, if you have two men, 1 man, doesn't change that much. When you start to have 3, 4, really 4 is where it starts to kick in. 4 men can now take on a lot more than, you know, 1 man. If the ratio is 1 to 15 for 1 man, 4 men, you'd say, oh, well, they should be able to take up, you know, like 60 guys or whatever. But with 4 men, you can already run circles around a military unit of 100, 150, maybe even 200, you know. And when you've got 10, I'm not saying you're going to run circles around 1,000, but what I'm saying is that you will hold your own. You know, 10 men like I'm talking about against 1,000 men, and I can equip them whichever way I want, and the military on the other side can be equipped whichever way they want. With the possible exception of either we all have satellites and drones, or none of us has, right? So equal footing in that terms, equal footing technologically. I'll take the 10 men every time, especially if you don't have drones and satellites and that sort of stuff. I'll definitely take the 10 men, and I will not only hold the line, but I'll give those 1,000 guys a worry that their morale is gonna affect them to the point where they might just turn tail. So that's the kind of thinking that I have. It's very difficult to go from that level of intensity and attention to detail to a huge big picture where essentially, especially if you're playing Xanatos Gambit, like Xanatos Gambits, like Vox is good at, which means that giant parts of your plan can fail, but because you're a strategist, you've put the strategy in such a way that regardless pretty much of what happens, you're still going to win. You're still going to achieve your objective. And Vox is a master at that. So, you know, you have to know your limitations. Like a very wise man from a movie once said, man's going to know his limitations. Was it 5 or 6 bullets, you know? The thing is, you should always carry one of those 8-bullet revolvers just to fuck with the punk. So, anyway, I think I've sort of said quite a lot of things, but the main point of this one, you know, I just go on a little bit, but the main point of this one is there is a blood feud on. We have a referee that has volunteered, Owen, so it's on you now. Let's see if you respond. Yeah, let's see if you have the audacity to respond after calling me British. You know, it's just, I don't know. You know, it's nothing you can say to that. You know, unforgivable, really. I mean, but you know, we'll see what happens.